This episode's going to sound a little bit different, and that's by design. We've written and refined this conversation with great care because when it comes to AI and leadership, there's too much noise and not enough clarity. We're not trying to cover everything about AI, and we're not claiming to have all the answers. What we are doing is inviting you into the kind of conversations I get to have every day with founders, CEOs, investors, and executive teams about how AI is shaping scale and strategy and leadership itself. And let's be honest, there's a wide spread of opinions out there. Some people are deeply afraid of what AI means to their role or their relevance. Others are convinced they can build $1 billion business with no people at all. Most of us are somewhere in between. This episode isn't about trying to boil the ocean. It's here to offer perspective. Think of this as like a fireside chat, not a keynote, a pattern recognition session, not a masterclass. You'll hear us follow a more structured script than usual. And yes, you may even notice moments where I'm reading from notes. That's not a performance flaw, it's commitment to clarity and to get this right. Because we believe you care more about real insight than polished performance. So pull up a seat, listen in. This isn't theory, it's what's really happening behind closed doors. Let's climb.
They call him the company whisperer.
Kirk Dando.
Kirk Dando.
And Kirk Dando.
Kirk Dando.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Dando.
All right, Kirk, we're here for episode 7 of 12, the first season of the For You Leaders podcast. I almost started with this, but I'll just say it now. It's my privilege to be across from Kirk GPT for this episode on AI to extract
awesome.
all of your 30 years of wisdom and knowledge. And so, no, this is human Kirk, which I love, getting to hear from you and distill those insights. And so, yeah, we're talking about AI today, what you're hearing behind closed doors as you work with these leaders. How do you want to help set the table for today's conversation?
Well, one of the things is this was not going to be part of our original 12 episode series for this season. But it's, if you're leading anything right now, it's not a side conversation. AI is just not. It's in many cases a main conversation. Whether it's in board meetings, it's in strategic offsites, product roadmaps. I even have some CEOs that are using it when they go out to dinner with their spouse to select which bottle of wine they're going to use. It's everywhere. And, it's not if AI is going to change how we lead. It's really how well and how fast people are going to adapt to it. And really what this episode is about is what I'm seeing below the surface. I'm not seeing executives use it just for content or automation. I'm really starting to see where people are using it to reflect and to think and act almost as like a board member or an advisor or a coach or a thought partner. And what I really am thinking about and hoping that people listen and get out of this is we're not here trying to be experts on this. You and I are figuring it out just like everybody else. And we just want to invite people into this conversation to get perspective, to think deeper and broader about something that's real and is happening. And so this shift causes a real question. And that's kind of what the thread we're going to pull through this is, what part of your job could AI do? And maybe more importantly, what part shouldn't it do? So there's really two things that we want to cover in this episode is one is, how are the leaders that I'm spending time with and getting the chance to kind of behind closed doors, how are they using AI to really shift and think about and scale what matters most? And then, why? Why are we seeing where it is replacing some roles? And sometimes when I'm talking to CEOs, they're hesitant to even say that, or even other executives. But it's a fact. It's not a threat. And so, yes, it's replacing some roles, and even some kinds of coaching are being replaced. But it really gives us a chance to think about how can we still add value and use this to leverage growth. We've talked about in past episodes, change is inevitable, and growth is that choice. And the reason so many times people don't want to change is because it's not just about operationally tough, it's emotionally tough. And we're seeing some big shifts here.
To your point, yeah, this wasn't the plan to have an entire episode on AI. I think that we understand the importance of talking about it. We're more so talking about just how you've learned to grow leaders and impact those people to grow their businesses over 30 years of experience. So let's talk through this. What are you hearing, and what are some of those use cases that people should be stealing?
I'm seeing it everywhere from where people are really hesitant and it's interesting because it's people aren't really giving a reason why they're hesitant. They're not saying, "Oh, that's just a fad." It's just not, no one's saying those kind of things, but there's some people saying, "I'm just not going to use it." And I don't know if it's just a fear of what it might mean for someone's existence. And I've also have other CEOs and I mean experienced veteran entrepreneurs are thinking that they can build $1 billion company with no people and everything in between. But I think we've got to figure out how to, and this is one of those mind shifts that I'd like people to think about is it's like, how do we make it a cultural positive issue and not just a technical one? And so some of the ways I've seen is I have one company, they weren't using AI. People were a little bit resistant to it. In a Forbes article I was reading, they were talking about one of the biggest problems with AI is not the employees using it, it's leadership's hesitancy or reluctance to really push it. So what this company did is they created what they called AI Olympics.
Mm.
And it was pretty cool. And what essentially what it is they bring everybody together. I think it's once every week. It might be once every single month. They have a panel of selected guests, some internal, some out. And what they're doing is letting people showcase how they're using AI to solve real business problems. But also people can bring in how they're using personally, like I talked about, the friend who's using it to pick, which wine at dinner that they're going to have.
Always red, by the way.
Exactly.
Always red.
And so what, the panel picks winners, and throughout the course of a year, the people that have won the prizes, they get a trip to Hawaii. In fact, they're actually leaving next Wednesday. And so it's kinda created this really kinda neat cultural, fun way to bring this about, and really it's not it sounds fun, and it is fun, but it's not fluff because it's really, deliberate about experimentation and rewarding
Mhm.
creativity.
That's really neat. You're incentivizing hard work at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? Like in creativity.
Well, and it's kinda like that, almost like crowdsourcing, right? Because you come and you present, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great I" and so it kinda creates, this momentum or this flywheel of really bringing something, that maybe people aren't really using. Some people are super users, and bringing it together in a community,
Mhm.
that's building those bonds that can handle the weight of the truth. Another one where I've seen is where we've brought AI into strategic offsites. Now, once again, there's articles. McKinsey wrote an article how AI is reshaping strategy.
Mhm.
Great article. We can put it in the show notes, worth reading and looking at. But that isn't the reason that we kind of brought it in. What we brought it in for was is to really kind of introduce, a new way of kind of thinking. So oftentimes in offsites, in which we've talked about, I've spent a lot of time in, there's some level of like a difficult problem or some level of conflict. Maybe it's conflicting priorities, maybe it's tension across the teams. Um, and I've just kind of seen it in the past where they kind of get stuck there and you can tell or that there's things that aren't being said or questions that aren't being asked or risks that aren't being considered because it has a human factor in it that people just don't want to step on each other's toes and stuff like that. So they're trying to
Mhm.
navigate with these cryptic kind of conversations.
Mhm.
Well, what we've done is we've started to really use that when I feel those times and those tensions inside of an offsite is we'll prompt, the AI with a particular question or thought or idea to kind of unlock some questions or to expose risks that we have not thought of. And what
Mhm.
that does is it lets everybody experience the friction without making it personal. And
Mm.
that what that allows us to do, once again, we talk about decision velocity. What that allows us to do is to get to the discussion, the actual discussion, the heart of the discussion, the truth of the discussion a lot faster with more honesty. And
Mhm.
so that's been a creative way where a lot of times I'll see where, we've come up with the agendas, everyone shows up to the offsites and we kind of work our way through the agenda, but almost treating it like it's another person on the team that's sitting in the room and
Mhm.
knowing when how to prompt it and how to use it. And it's really created some pretty cool unlocks in the strategy sessions that I've been able to be part of, more than just once again content and automation and those kind of
Mhm.
things. It's actually AI is not defensive, right?
Mhm.
It assumes positive intent. You ask it a question, it just answers it, and so it kind of takes that human factor out of some of those kind of messy conversations and unlocks them. you know, AI can really help us with the standpoint of like in the strategy, it can be a great researcher, right?
Mhm.
So many times when we're getting ready for strategy offsites, it takes so much time to like study the market, study products, study competitors, study. It can help us really accelerate that as a researcher. And then it can be an interpreter, taking all that data and
Mhm.
finding kind of the pattern recognition, where are the dots connected, where aren't they? And then being a thought partner, kind of
Mhm.
taking those things and helping mature our thoughts and thinking deeper. As a simulator, think we've got 3 or 4 different kind of opportunities. What are the pros and cons of these different things? It can be a simulator, and then it can help us be a more effective communicator. Like, how do we tighten this up? How do I tighten this message up? The thing it can't do is that kind of human judgment.
Mm.
Not when I say can't, I probably should say not right now. It doesn't, right?
At least
And
as we're recording this
yeah,
episode.
exactly.
Yeah.
As we're recording this. And so human judgment is essential to crafting a strategic vision. We're going to talk a lot more about that, which combines, the organization, ambition with a view of how it can be realized.
Mhm.
And AI won't change the need for leaders to demonstrate that strategic courage by committing big moves. And we'll talk about this. AI will answer the question you ask, not the one you should have asked. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. So.
Mhm. No, that's I'm excited to get into that too. I was thinking about this earlier about that concept, and I know I'm kind of getting ahead here
Mhm.
about the idea of answering the question you ask it, not what you should be asking. Part of it too, this idea of human judgment, to give you like a layman's example of how that can play out in AI today. So let's just say like if I'm taking McKenna and the kids out to dinner, my wife
Mhm.
and kids out to dinner tonight, um, and I say, all well intended, you know, find us a place for dinner
Mhm.
tonight. And it gives us this cool Greek food restaurant,
Mhm.
right? What it gave me is, okay, on whatever criteria
Mhm.
put in, that it assumes, okay, you're going out to dinner with your family, so here's spots near you with good reviews. That's probably how it would digest that information.
Mhm.
But what it doesn't have is maybe the stakeholders are three kids,
Yeah.
right? What if they don't like Greek food, right? Or what if it's important to us that we don't break the budget? And so to think through of how that example works, it takes human judgment to say, oh no, like my kids would never eat Greek food. And so
Mhm.
we've built habits of this where you'll Google search and you'll scroll past options, whether it be picking a restaurant, picking a business to work with,
Mhm.
looking for a leadership coach, whatever it might be. Like the situations are endless, but you are qualitatively expressing human judgment in real time, going past things. And you can train AI to do that, but it's not going to do it on its own, is
Yeah.
my point. And so, a
That's a
better,
really great point.
a better, you know, prompt, I guess, and to go into like prompt engineering and all of that,
Mhm.
like how you train the AI to give you a better output. It's
Mhm.
all about the input. And so the input could be, find me a family friendly restaurant that doesn't break the bank. By the way, we don't like these kinds of foods,
Yeah.
Greek food being one
Mhm.
of them.
Mhm.
Now the options are much more refined, but the only way it gets there is with that human judgment. Like
Mhm.
I've got to know my kids.
Mhm.
I've got to know what they like and don't like.
Mhm.
I've got to know what is not breaking the bank for us, because
Mhm.
what doesn't break the bank for us might break the bank for someone else, right? Like I've
Yeah.
got to give it context
Uh-huh.
for it to give me a better output. I can't just expect it to say, "Hey, help me figure out a place for dinner tonight," and then give me, in the same way that the people pick wine. I'm sure that they're telling it, oh, we like
Yeah.
these types of
And we're
notes and
having this kind of
varietals. Yeah, we're
food
having
and
this kind of food and all of that. And some
mhm.
of that is just general best practice information, but some of
Mhm.
that's very personalized.
Yeah. Yeah, and to kinda use that example, kind of bring it back to what I was talking about, like, you know, great strategy is always going to require a leader to be able to decide what the big move is
Hmm.
and be able to make it. So in this instance, you might be able to be like, we're actually going to go try Greek food because my kids have never tried it. They say they don't like it and they don't, and knowing them, they might not, but I'm going to make the decision that we're going to go ahead and go to this or whatever the case may
Hmm.
be. Once again, it's that dance, it's that interaction that we
Hmm.
need to start thinking about. Like I said in the beginning, and the shift is causing the question of is like, what is the work that AI can do that I'm currently doing? And what is the work that AI shouldn't do?
Hmm.
And you'll hear me say this probably enough times in this. To me, I think personally, the risk is not that AI is going to replace the work that I'm doing. It's that I become too lazy or lose sight of what I need to do to come alongside it to lead to still do the things that only I can do
Hmm.
and not get lazy in that decision.
That's really well said. So, how are you using AI as a coach right now?
So a lot of it's, trial and error and learning new things, but I'm using it really in three ways. One is compression, which is, I find I'm using weekly updates, kind of using Slack threads, taking meeting notes, and AI will surface the patterns of things that maybe, that I missed or didn't see or didn't hear, get faster into the coaching, get to the heart of the matter. And then scenario simulation. If we're weighing three or four good options in strategy, fundraising, hiring, whatever it might be, name the scenario. Really what I'm seeing is we'll use those to walk together, and we'll provide that context, that human judgment, that context to those different scenarios, and use that. And then the other one is for clarity checks. You know how much I like clarity, and I talked about getting to clarity. I'll run AI tests on investor decks, customer messaging, leadership memos, different things, and try to see where is it providing clarity, where is it maybe unintentionally expanding on confusion, and using that to tighten up those communications, which just once again helps me help the leaders that are growing these very successful but difficult to grow companies get to the heart of matter faster and pick up their decision velocity. So I'm using AI to help me accelerate. I'm loving it, and I'm seeing the results of it.
What do you love about it?
I've got to kind of talk things through. I'm a person that processes by talking things through, and I can wear people down, but I haven't been able to wear AI down yet. I can kind of keep on, like I said, putting in those different prompts and asking different questions, and it's for me, it's energizing and it's fun because I'm thinking about the CEOs and the executives I'm working with and the things that, like I said, that they're going through and stuff like, and they're using this, but I can kind of take it to accelerate. And then once again, you've heard me say this, I get a helper's high. Like I'm not distracted or worried by it. I think it is going to, and we're going to talk about this. It is going to it is replacing roles. It's not going to, it is. And that's a fact. And that's what I want people to hear in this. Let's not be afraid of that. Let's not let that push us away from the table or hide in the shadows. Let's get in the light and figure this out.
What I think I hear you saying in this is that it's not reducing the amount that you have to do, right?
Mhm.
Like reducing the work it takes to go coach and help people,
Mhm.
but that it's enhancing the way that you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you said in fewer words. I always have to take like 5,000 words to say one
Well,
thing.
my job here is to listen, and you've got a lot of insights, which is great.
I've
And
got a
by the
lot of
way,
words.
if it if you said you haven't worn AI down yet, it's probably you've got some great land in Colorado out there. You probably have your own data center built out by the lake out
Exactly.
there, and it's running really hard out there just
Exactly.
to run Kirk
Yeah.
GPT
Yeah.
every day.
That and the geese.
Yeah, the geese. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you got to chase them away from the shed. It's
that's right.
actually a data center in hiding.
That's right.
That's awesome. This is all really important. And one thing I want to touch on here is, we've talked about what AI can do, and there's a lot that it can do. And I
Mm,
want to be sensitive to the word can't, right?
mhm.
We've talked about why we want to be sensitive to that word, but what can't AI do, or more importantly, what's its role today for leaders, and how should we be thinking about that?
Well, I think it's a massive role that I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the answers to that question. But one of the ways that I am really seeing it is, AI is really reducing friction. Think about friction in speed to, coding, to human interaction, to thought processes. I mean, at the core, I'm seeing it where it's reducing a lot of friction for the leaders that I'm working with. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is, if you really think about it, real leadership often lives inside of friction.
Mm.
I oftentimes tell my CEOs when I'm coaching is pay attention to the tension, and it's kind of pay attention to where that friction is. But AI is helping remove some of that.
I bet a lot of that tension is nonverbal too. Like when
Hmm.
you're in these offsites and these meetings, that being able to read a room is a gift, and it's a gift you have, just to be totally clear about that. And I see that in business, but I see that just in life and family dynamics and whatnot. How do you help leaders? Here, let me preface this. I think that comes naturally to you, and maybe that's just because you have the 30 years of experience. I don't know. Maybe that's
Hmm.
just who you are. But how do you help people learn to read a room and sense the tension and navigate that?
That's a great question because I don't know that I spend a lot of time teaching people that. It's more caught than taught. And I have some leaders that just flat admit, like, that's why you're here because I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
I do want you here to help that. And I do want that. And they care enough.
Hmm.
They care enough that the room is being read. And I've seen leaders and executives that I've worked with grow in that by watching me and watching others kind of be able to read that room.
I mean, it's so helpful. And you mentioned earlier about having, an AI co-pilot in the room as almost another person to bounce ideas off of. And
Hmm.
so just being able to call that out and admit, okay, hey, this isn't my expertise or my
Hmm.
strength. And so we're going to rely on someone like Kirk. We're going to
Hmm.
rely on AI to help pressure test things. And we're going to ask it, not the questions we want to ask it, but the questions that, frankly, we don't want to be asking and should be asking.
The reality of it is AI can't read. reduce that friction. Yeah,
Mhm.
it can help you think faster, which is a good thing. It can write faster,
Mhm.
move faster, and that's adding real value. And that's
Mhm.
that's once again pulling it back to this decision velocity. Keep on pulling back that. But the best CEOs that I work with, they're not confusing speed with wisdom. I want to talk a little bit about that. They're using AI to leverage, but they don't outsource direction.
Mm.
That's key. They don't outsource direction to a tool that really can't feel or read the room, like we were just talking about. Here's the real tension, like I said, is it can reduce friction, but oftentimes real leadership lives inside of friction. It's, in those emotionally charged, kind of politically really delicate,
Mhm.
relationally messy moments where, judgment really matters and being able to read that and see that more so than even speed. Um, AI might offer a fast answer and it might even be right. We were talking a little bit earlier how maybe needs to be contextualized. It might even be right. But if you do it without that context, without that emotional nuance, being able to read and see and feel that room, without
Mhm.
that pressure testing, it through real experience, standing on scars, you may solve the wrong problem beautifully.
Mm.
And so let me give you an example.
Okay.
Let's think about this. Let's say you're a CEO and you've started to get signals that a senior executive isn't working out. And so you sit down and you prompt AI to generate a performance improvement plan and maybe some talking points and kind of help you shape that. Or maybe you have it help you think through even steps on how to replace that individual. This saves time. This helps be a thought partner. Like I said, it helps you think through these things. But what if the issue is actually role confusion, which we've talked about in
Mhm.
earlier episodes, or it's a breakdown in trust? What if what's needed isn't replacement,
Mm.
but it's reconciliation?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, flip that and think about it also. What if reconciliation isn't the right move? What if it's really that you need to make a courageous decision and part ways with that individual? But AI simply just mirrors what your avoidance of that issue is or avoidance of that confrontation.
Mm. I think what you're speaking to is there is power in human ingenuity and being able to read a situation that AI doesn't offer today, and it may
Mhm,
at some point, but it
mhm,
doesn't offer today.
mhm,
So we're going to speak from that lens. It makes me think of to give you take your example and apply it to something real. And I didn't think about this until you said this live here. One of the more powerful stories that comes to mind. My dad, his mentor growing up, a man named C.H.A.I.R. He is someone that I look up to and has been a family figure for all of us in my family growing up for a long time. Pastor of a church in Northeast Dallas area, and he passed away a couple years ago, actually, unexpectedly. But he part of his upbringing when he was in his 20s and 30s, he pastored a church in Northwest Arkansas
mhm,
area, and things weren't going well. So they brought in a guy whose job it was to basically what they wanted to do is confirm that they should fire him. Let's bring in this guy to make sure we're not wrong
mhm,
here, because
mhm.
we think we need to fire Steve,
Okay.
right? So that was their way of thinking was
Mhm,
not reconciliation, but
mhm,
replacement. But they wanted to make sure we're checking the right boxes, and then how do we do that? And that was this
mhm,
guy's job. So he comes in, he's like, all right, let me get time with Steve. So he sits down with Steve, takes him out to lunch or whatever. He's like, tell me what you love about your job. He's like, oh,
mhm.
I love teaching. Like I love getting up there on Sunday and teaching. And like if that's all I had to do is teach and then just do my studies, because he was in seminary at the time,
Uh-huh.
I would just love to do that. Like I would
Mhm,
thrive on that. It's like, okay, well then where are you getting stuck? Like what's holding you back? And they're like,
mhm,
oh man, they've got me going to these, lunch with the pastor thing, and I'm up at the hospital at night because life happens and people
mhm.
need you. And it's like I'm doing all these other things. And like I wish we had somebody in the church that was more dedicated to doing that. Not that I'm above those things. It's just not my strength. He's
Yeah,
like, it's
yeah.
just I relate better when I get to teach and then get
Mhm,
one-on-one with men specifically. He was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Well, how's the teaching going? Like, how are
mhm.
Sundays going?" And he's like, "Great. Like, I think it's going great." And so they went back and asked the church leadership. They thought the same thing. They're like, "Yeah, it's just like that's 1 day a week though. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how this isn't working." And they're like, "Okay, here, why don't you do this?" They went back to church leadership. They said, "Why don't you let Steve focus on teaching? He needs to finish his seminary. He's behind on that because he's
Mhm,
bogged down by the other stuff.
mhm,
Find someone internally or, group up and then
mhm,
go fill the gap there so that he can finish seminary, get that off his plate,
mhm,
and just let them focus on teaching and let's see what
Mhm.
happens. Well, what ended up happening is it unlocked Steve to go finish at DTS, Dallas
Mhm.
Theological Seminary.
Mhm.
He wrote a book called Point Man. Point Man became one of the top selling men's ministry books of all time. And the book was his dissertation to graduate.
Oh, wow.
The book never would have happened had they not let them do
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
right? And he went on to go found like a global men's ministry, speaking
Mhm.
to crowds of
Mhm.
100,000 people at a time.
Mhm.
None of that would have happened had that unlock not
Mhm.
happened. But that came from someone who read the room. He got to know the person. He sat down with Steve and he was like, "Tell me what you love. Tell me what
Mhm.
you don't love." He went and talked to the other guys. It wasn't one way. He wasn't just
Mhm.
trying to help Steve. He was like, "Hey, tell me what you think's going well." And all the stars kind of aligned. Like, it sounds like Sundays are going really well, but no one's really happy about the
Mhm.
rest of the week. What if the resolution here isn't another pastor? What if it's figuring out how we reassign the role
Yeah.
and bring clarity to
Okay.
the role? And
Uh-huh.
I mean, what an amazing unlock, and the amount of people, my family and my dad specifically, that he impacted. I mean, one of many, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't happen if you just treat it as a linear, okay, I think we need to replace him. How do we
Yeah.
do that? Going through that process that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great story. I really appreciate you sharing as you're talking. It reminds me so many stories and examples along my journey where that has been the exact case where it's, what they thought the issue was, person, process, product, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
was actually not the issue. It was
Mhm.
not at the heart of the issue. And I'm thinking about a very real issue right now as you're talking with the CEO who has got a really capable team. This is a very experienced veteran entrepreneur and CEO that has someone on their team that started looking, that's part of where this example came from, looked like they were underperforming. They did actually consult AI, and this is a person, we've drawn in previous episodes where, on that vertical axis, this is somebody that, is performance, and then on the horizontal axis is kind of that loyalty, that person that really is a good cultural fit. There's a person who was in that upper right quadrant. Performance was great, uh, loyalty and cultural fit and drive was great, but the business grew. And interestingly enough, a lot of what's happened with AI has pushed them down into where the performance had kind of dropped, but still, I mean, super
Mm.
loyal, engaged, caring had kind of come down. And so what they were doing was considering now, is it time to replace this person? Or do we need to hire a bunch more people underneath them? And I said, we just got to get them back in that upper right quadrant.
Mhm.
Let's think of some ways to do that. I said, why don't we just bring in somebody that has expertise in this particular area? This person's a learner. This person's hungry. They're not going to be offended by that. They're going to be motivated by that. You give them an opportunity to grow. They see a level of care that the business has for them.
Mhm.
And I said, the trick is we got to find somebody that really has that expertise that can kind of come in and really help, not somebody that's just going to kind of come in and do a bunch of arm waving and not really actually provide any value, but a bunch of templates. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody that'll come along shoulder to shoulder and really, invest in this person and grow them. We did that, and I was on the phone with this CEO yesterday, and he was like, "That was the simplest but most powerful suggestion."
Mm.
He goes, "I just can't get how powerful that was." Well, that's an example. Once again, I'm not tooting my own horn here in doing that. It was just I had objectivity, I had experience, and I could just see to the heart of the matter. So that's a great example. And that, we talked about this, if you don't have someone asking you the hard questions, kind of pushing you towards the truth. We talk a lot about moving towards the truth. If it
Mm.
gets too hot, we can back away and deal with that, but let's keep moving towards that. AI, at least as I know it right now, won't do that. It will give you an answer to the question you've asked, not the one you should have asked. And we said that earlier. It will give you the answer to that question.
Mm.
So, that's kind of somewhat, that's the reward and that's the danger. The risk isn't that AI gives you bad advice.
Mm.
It's just that it gives you maybe incomplete advice.
Mm.
And because it doesn't know your culture, right? It doesn't, the things you were talking about with Steve, it doesn't know those things. It can't take you out to lunch and ask some more probing questions. It doesn't know your patterns, your baggage, and it definitely doesn't know when you're lying to yourself, which we can all
That's
do
funny,
this.
but that's so true
Those
though.
sweet little lies, right?
It only knows what you're giving it as an input, and I guess unless we're all putting neural links in our head where our brain waves are being monitored,
I, I
I
did
get
that a number of years ago.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. To go back to the example, I wanted to circle back to this, and then I don't mean to interrupt you on this a
No,
little bit.
no, no, this is
I'm thinking of
great.
the CEO. So you talked about the idea to reference in a previous episode. We kind of had that grid of the
Mhm.
four, different quadrants, and you talked about, how do we focus on getting this person to the upper right quadrant?
Yeah, so that
Um,
right idea, wrong person matrix.
right, exactly. And
Mhm.
so that tool, that philosophy, what I'm thinking about in that is AI isn't going to tell you like, hey, have you thought about, you know, reinvesting in this person, or like how you get them here?
Exactly.
But could you use this is my question, is could you use, or did you use in this scenario, AI to then, once you've identified that, which took, human thinking and experience, can you use AI at that point to say, okay, I'm actually thinking that we need to figure out how to get this person doing these things or performing in this way. What are some ways, some practical ways that I can do that? Is
Mhm.
that a way that you could then leverage AI?
I absolutely think you can. I did not use it in this instance because typically, you know, maybe this isn't your intended question, but I want to answer one maybe that you didn't ask is like when I look at it, if somebody's performance is off, we can deal with that. But if they have a bad heart, meaning they're too prideful, they don't want the help, maybe they just have a blind spot. Maybe they're that person that when pain and suffering hits them, they transfer it onto other people. They don't let it transform them like we've talked about in the past. That's hard to deal.
Mhm.
That's hard to change that one. But when it's a performance issue, which this particular one was, so how I would use it if I was to go back and do it is saying like, hey, I've got somebody here that's great fit, that leans in, that wants the coaching, takes coaching very well, but their performance has dropped. Maybe, and kind of give some of the reasons why and say what are some creative ways or thoughtful ways we might think about really investing in this person to get them back to where their feet are under them. I would hope that one of the reasons they would say is bring in some outside help.
Mhm.
I mean, it could have done that possibly. I didn't use it for that. That was just from years of experience. That's how I've
Mhm.
seen people brought up. You could also ask it like, hey, I've got somebody that's really isn't a great cultural fit, and they continue to be somebody that digs their heels in. It's that open door, closed mind that, they're the
Mhm.
resistance to change. They shake their head up and down, but their active behavior says something different. Yeah, I mean, we can prompt it and ask it whatever we want, but once again, the problem is like we've got to bring that contextual part of that where we're standing on real scars, where we lived experience of failure, and we still chose to care.
Mhm.
A lot of people are asking me, and that's what you're asking me in this, and this is why we're doing this episode, is that, how are some of the smartest CEOs I know using this? And they're really using AI for knowledge, but not for wisdom. And so, AI can give you knowledge. It can be fast, accurate, and even insightful. And we've seen that. We're giving examples that it can summarize reports, talk about how we're using it in strategic, offsites, identifying patterns and generating solutions. But wisdom, it is very nuanced, and it knows when to hold back and when to
Mhm.
really push, that wisdom, that human side of it, and when a real problem isn't the one that's actually being asked that we're talking about. So, AI might tell you which employee is underperforming, stack rank, and kind of tell you that and give you those measurements. But wisdom knows whether it's a performance issue or maybe it's a leadership one,
Mhm.
like the ones you were talking about with Steve. That's a great example. AI might suggest the fastest go to and maybe the best go to market plan, but wisdom sees how that plan might just erode trust with your customers or stretch the team beyond what they're already doing or compromise a long term positioning that we have really worked on. And so you see that dance, what we're trying to explain here. So, that's really this, it's not this simple, and never it is, but that's the difference. AI really can connect the dots, but wisdom sees the blind spots.
Mm.
AI can connect the dots and it's powerful, and that's removing that friction. But wisdom can see the blind spots. And I'm going to I'll probably bring it up 10 more times. This example you used about Steve, like there were some blind spots. The things that were, seemed overly obvious and embarrassingly simple, and the answer is oftentimes not the answer.
Mhm. I think one way to put this is that AI is gonna help inform decision making,
Hmm.
but not make the decision for you, and that's one
Hmm.
of those key differentiators today, is that there is agentic AI that is meant to take, like, menial tasks
Hmm.
out of your hands. So,
Yes.
like,
I've got
if
I've got I've got clients who are building companies completely on that, and it's working
Mhm.
and it's revolutionizing what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it's
Mhm.
adding real value. But
No,
keep
totally.
going,
Yeah,
sorry.
totally. Yeah. So, like, I mean, and Zapier is a great example of a
Mhm,
company that is built on agentic AI, where
mhm,
the whole point of Zapier, I don't know how familiar you are with their technology, but what it does is they integrate with all these various
mhm,
platforms and technologies,
mhm,
and then you have your own stack of things, and then you create these task flows that you say, okay, I need it
mhm.
to here's a marketing example, is that when someone hits the website, I want it to then enrich the data using this source and
Yep,
then send that information to this source.
yep.
And agentic AI, what it can do is, at some point the automation stops. Like,
Mhm,
and I've got to manually go do something. And I can bring agentic AI to help alleviate wherever that manual part comes into it. What that's not doing, though, is it's not replacing my decision making. It's
mhm.
just taking the things off my plate that would take my time. So one of
Yeah.
the things, and I'll reference this later here in a bit, but
Mhm,
there was a Forbes article with a study, and it talked about like the most irreplaceable jobs
mhm.
with
The ones
AI's
that cannot be
disruption.
replaced are gonna be difficult anyways.
Yeah,
Mhm,
exactly. They're
mhm,
strategic, and one of the top ones that I identified was the executive,
mhm.
the one who makes decisions, the ones responsible for running the business, because the heart of AI, again, today, this could change, but
Yeah.
today is not to go make those decisions and replace, people, in the sense of making the decision for people, that we don't
Mhm,
need any kind of human
mhm.
interaction or wisdom.
Yeah,
It's that it informs decisions significantly, and I
yeah.
think it's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point, and I think is, like any new technology or anything that's new, we're probably are going to over-index on this for a season at a time. We're probably going to outsource decisions and things that we shouldn't, and we'll learn and we'll pull back. And I was talking to another one of my CEOs the other day. They, a while back had kind of like a Jerry Maguire moment where they wrote this letter to their entire company about how we have got to adopt this and blah, 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 and everything else like that. And it was mildly well received. um, but they did start using it. What we're talking about is how quickly things are changing. And he was saying, a year ago, how they were using it was way overused. But he
Mhm,
said, actually, if we use that exact same way today, it'd be just fine because it is caught up now. The point
mhm.
being is I'm sure we are going to have these use cases and these scenarios where we're going to learn like anything, but that's what this is all about, learning together. Everyone's, talking about it. And so, that's
Mhm.
part of this journey.
One of the things that comes to mind as you say that is, at the end of the day, AI is a technology disruptor, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we've seen this, if you go study the last handful of decades, couple centuries worth of evolutions around technology. At Sustainment, where I work full time, our CEO co-wrote a book with one of our board members, Joseph Kopser, who you know well.
Hmm.
The book is called Catalyst. I think I referenced this in a previous
Yes.
episode.
Hmm.
But they talk about just various ways that the world changes and how leadership evolves in that.
Hmm.
And one of the sections is on technology. And I'm so fascinated to go backwards in this, where we get so used to this, right? Like, I'm
Hmm.
sitting across from you with a supercomputer right in front of me, and that's
Hmm.
helping guide today's discussion ultimately, right?
Hmm.
We may not have that technology, the technology in these microphones and stuff, right? Like, at some point in time, you go through, there's advances and then there's total revolutions. And like, one of those revolutions was the idea of, okay, so the computer was made, right? Like, and that's a
Hmm.
revolution.
Hmm.
And but then there were like advances on how, computers got faster, they got smarter, they got expanded capabilities. Those aren't revolutions, those are just expansions to it. But then all of a sudden, computers weren't just for the office, they were for home.
Yeah.
And then computers weren't just for home, they were
And your phone.
in your back pocket
Yeah.
all of a
Hmm.
sudden. And those are like revolutions where it changes the way that life is done, and it changes the way
Hmm.
that businesses are run. So I think that that's what's happening with AI, is that you're seeing this disruption
Hmm.
occurring right now,
Hmm.
where people are really trying to figure out and ask the question, like,
Hmm.
what does this mean for our business? So it also makes me think of, to humanize this for a second, because I don't think anything of what I just said was necessarily groundbreaking, but to humanize this and really normalize the journey. Um, when you think about disruption, and like, so I think of a memo going out to the company of like, hey, we really need to lean in. Like, I
Hmm.
need everyone bought in
Hmm.
on this. That almost, on one hand is like, yes, like, I think that's very wise and is the right thing to do. On another hand, you could think of like Elon Musk, like, send me your email of like the whatever it
Yeah.
was, and like your
Uh,
job depends on it, like the things that you did that contributed,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Uh-huh.
the pressure, like the disruption, but what he's trying to do is create disruption within the government, right?
Hmm.
In that. And so you see things like that, it feels like we're just in a disruptive era that
Mhm,
for leaders in their teams specifically, I want to emphasize that
mhm.
can be jarring and
Very much
it
so.
can leave you very anxiety ridden. How are you navigating that, or how are you seeing that play out with the companies you work with, just
Mhm.
culturally and at the heart of a person, and then maybe even you personally? How is that being received?
I said this at the beginning. How do we make this not a technical issue or something that our CTO or whatever needs to be handling, but how we make this a cultural um, positive in doing these things? So I'm seeing, or I'm spending a lot of time, at least currently, with CEOs and teams. It's a deliberate experimentation. Rewarding that creativity versus chicken little. The sky's falling in. Get on board. You're going to get left behind. Like this is going to be a train wreck for you if you don't do. And at the end of the day, it's happening. So really working with, leaders to figure out how to navigate, this in a way that people actually embrace it and
Mhm.
use it. Candidly, in the beginning, I was like, what is this? What does this all mean? What is this,
Mhm.
how am I going to use this and stuff like that? And I just went kind of back to my roots of like, what really matters? I want to help people go fast and be able to reward those behaviors. I want them to be able to build teams and communities that change the world, where they're rivers and not reservoirs, where they're not, these selfish, self-collecting entities. And I said, all right, well, how can it help me to do that? And I just started going down those rabbit holes. But
Mhm.
I went back to that foundation of what, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And now, the teams and the people I'm getting to work with, we're navigating through that.
Mm.
It's been a game changer.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, you make a great point, just how it can be helpful, how it can be useful. Talked a little bit about how you're using it as a coach. I love how you just said that you went back to your roots, right? What's
mhm,
important to you. So AI being a tool, I would, I guess, just kind of almost position this in a way of to use terminology you use throughout this podcast.
mhm,
It's a tool. It's not a Sherpa, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you think. What does that mean when you hear that? And yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, it's been a game changer. I'm using it in my prep to surface patterns, to, think about, client updates, how I'm looking at those, summarize threads across teams, draft different scenarios that, used to take me hours and hours to really kind of think through and kind of work my way through. The longer I do this, the faster it gets, but this has made it even faster, you know, but here's the key. It it's augmenting my coaching. It's not really replacing it. And if it does it someday, I'm okay with it because if it's better, great. I'm not afraid of that, but it's not right now. It's augmenting.
Specifically, then I guess what you're saying is that you're training it on 30 years of experience. You've created documents, but you're also, I mean, there's probably a lot of one-off inputs that you're recalling as
Mhm.
you interact with AI. Is that kind of how you would see that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a good way. I hadn't really thought about it, but that's probably what I'm doing, saying kind of 30 years. Once again, does prompt engineering and maybe it's just subconsciously not treating it as a tool to help me and a thought partner to help me help the people that I want to help the most. And so
Yeah.
I'm feeding it a lot, and it's interesting how well it's learned. In fact, I think I've showed you some stuff. You're like, this is crazy. It sounds like it's you. It's because it's really, we built this relationship.
Right. Oh, that's funny. So you did a great job explaining just how it helps you. I appreciate your vulnerability though in all of that of I guess just the open-handedness is probably the term I'd use of,
Mhm.
if ultimately AI becomes a better coach than you can, you're okay with that. Like you've
Mhm.
come to terms with that.
Mhm.
Um, what a great perspective on that. I don't think you can teach that personally or train models on that. Just that human touch is so important. And so I just really appreciate that from
Well,
you,
well, thank you.
your
I mean,
willingness to
it's
say
you.
that.
You and I have talked a lot about this, and I know you're wired up the same way. Like, if you want to protect your career, it's going to cause a lot of fear.
Mhm.
If you want to protect the people your career is built to help, it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, that is
It's a
game changing.
it's a paradigm, and I'm less worried about protecting my career as I am protecting the people that have trusted me with their careers.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, it's opened up a lot of doors,
Mm.
to really be able to help in that way. It's surprisingly useful. AI can help people really reflect, and it can stimulate scenarios. But I want to be clear.
Mhm.
if someone's coach or mentor or board member or advisor is all they're doing is mirroring their thoughts or your thoughts, or they're rephrasing your feelings, AI will replace that. That's my belief. And it should.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. What AI won't do is look you in the eye and say, you're lying to yourself. It won't say, you're solving the wrong problem. It's not Steve's got to go. It's we've got to actually restructure this. That's where, coaching and mentoring lives. It lives in context. It lives in those scar tissue. It lives in that care. And it won't do those things. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, what's being replaced and what, can't be necessarily or isn't being replaced.
Yeah, right. This is a lightning rod part of this.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right. I know. Yeah. So any people listening to this for controversy, feel free to perk up your ears on this part. But I mean, just tell me a little bit about, you've talked about the idea of AI connecting the dots, but that, leaders really can use that human touch to really transform the way that work gets done and life gets done.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about this.
Well, AI is replacing people. That's not a threat. It's a fact. And it's not just the low skill or the low leverage roles. It's not replacing just the low performers. GE used to cut the bottom 10%. They would have loved this tool. Would have really helped them there. It's replacing the roles that are highly structured and repeatable, where, the pattern recognition, the process, output can be automated without much context, really, and without very much conversation. And really, for the first time, and I've talked to several CEOs about this. We talk about what's behind closed doors. First time in my lifetime, or anything that I can think of. I'm sure there's listeners who are thinking something, but I'm seeing where it's both the blue collar jobs and the white collar jobs that are being disrupted. So think about some examples. Self-checkout is replacing cashiers. AI-powered scheduling tools is replacing administrative assistants. Seeing that a lot. Customer service chatbots are really resolving issues without reps ever getting involved at all. Junior analysts in finance, law, consulting are being replaced by tools that can process data and those reports more effectively, oftentimes faster and better. There was an article recently where I was reading a Big Four firm in London has reduced their entry-level analysts by 35%, not because work is down, but because AI can do it better, faster, and oftentimes, like I said,
Well, and those big firms too, they've built their own AI internally, right?
Sure.
Like it's not because they're, using ChatGPT like we do. They've trained it on all of their data. And to go back to your point of, you have data and you have experience and you have recognition, over the last 30 years here. If we built Kirk GPT, which maybe that's the outcome of this entire episode, is we just need to go build Kirk GPT that's trained.
It would have
modeled.
way too many words. People are like, this thing is way too wordy.
No, it would have kitschy phrases. That's what it would have. And I love them. I would just ask, be like, I need a good phrase here for this. But that's how they're doing it. Is that, they're training on that. So that's a really interesting call out. I want to add to that just some additional stats on this. And
and let me one other one I do want to call it, because it's been super interesting to me, is kind of entry level, or even not even so much entry level, but software engineers, are feeling the shift as code that generation. And it's interesting. This is interesting to me, anyways. Is one of the areas I'm seeing the most reluctance are from people that are in the technology part of the business. It's not from the marketing side or the HR side or the sales side. It's usually in the engineering and tech side where I'm seeing the biggest resistance. I don't know why that is. Anyways, we don't have to answer that, but yeah. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I want to hear about,
like spin our wheels on that a little bit.
Yeah, but everyone's feeling it, and everyone's talking about it. I mean, it's something that's very real. And there's a catchy saying that people are saying is, AI won't replace you, but somebody using it will.
That is true. To add some stats to this, a couple of the ones I had to flag here. Goldman Sachs estimated that AI could displace up to 300 million full-time jobs globally as it reshapes labor markets.
By when did it say?
It doesn't say when on this, but there are some of these do give it by timelines. The World Economic Forum forecasted, I think it was a year or two ago, that 85 million jobs would be replaced by AI by this year, by 2025.
And they're not talking about, like I said, the low level, low entry, low performers. A lot of these are white collar jobs.
A lot of these, because if you go into like, some of those more like blue collar jobs and whatnot. Like it talks about manufacturing losing about 2 million jobs. And I can speak to that one a little bit just because that's an industry that we service in my full time work. Um, it's really interesting, especially in America for manufacturing, to go into like that blue collar side of
Mhm.
things. Manufacturing, there's a workforce problem in America specifically right now.
Mhm.
40 years ago, manufacturing was dominated predominantly using manufacturing here in the US. Over the last 40 years, what's happened is that shifted. The power has gone from, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution to now, um, China globally has upwards, some estimates have 46% of the output or the power of manufacturing in the world today, right now, with estimates that by 2030, they'll have half
Oh my word.
purely in China, and that the US will have 11% of that. So there's a real problem in
Mhm.
terms of the US being able to build its own stuff. It's why you
Mhm.
hear the current administration, and I think, frankly, like whether, no matter who won the election, I think this was going to be a topic of
Yeah.
discussion.
Uh-huh.
Maybe the tactics of how we go about it would have been
Mhm.
different. But I think people realize the importance of, oh, wow, if something cooks off and we go to war, like we're gonna have a major problem because we're reluctant or we're reliant on other countries to go
Mhm.
make the stuff that we would need in the event of a war. And when you go to war, it disrupts supply chains where all
Oh,
of the
yeah.
investment goes to the warfighter.
Mhm.
At the end of the
Mhm.
day, everything shifts, both what is currently in private
Mhm.
and in public, and it shifts to focus on how do we support the warfighter. So all of that being said, manufacturing in the US, what it looks like today is that there is this gap of workers. And the reality that the industry is coming to terms with, I just got back from a event in Detroit that talked about this, and that's very focused on reindustrializing the US. The reality is it's not, we need to go hire enough workers and get people excited about manufacturing enough to cover the gap. I think we've come to terms with we're not going to cover the gap that China's covered
Mhm.
by just getting people inspired and getting enough people to go work. There's some layer of like we do need people thinking that manufacturing is a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and that it's impactful, and there's actually a really cool chord that's being struck in that of it's purpose driven missional work at the end of the day. Like you're really impacting a lot through it. But then there's this other component of using robotics, using automation and
Mhm.
technology there to clean up some of the stuff that frees us up to go make more without necessarily having to solely rely on
Mhm.
workforce to cover the gap. Because that's a tactic that's not going to solve the problem. So
Yeah.
I reference a stat of like it could lose 2 million jobs in 2025 to say it could lose that, yes, but some of that is that, and there's about 13 million jobs in manufacturing today in the US.
Mhm.
So like that's actually a pretty substantial number,
Yeah.
but that's augmented by, some robotics. And then it's also augmented by training up some new people to, get excited. And you've actually seen in the latest report that manufacturing is growing in job count, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll be redistributed. It's not gonna just go into a hole and never be seen again. So, those statistics, and we'll put those in the show notes. I wonder what people are listening. What's that when you hear 85 million jobs? And there's a lot of these kind of conversations that are, happening that once again, that's where we're seeing this divide where people are like super excited, like, hey, like I'm gonna really be able to build something and and it's not about I don't want to do it with people. It's just I want to do it efficiently. I want to do it well. I want to add a service or a product that adds true value. And then you've got other people that are like, and maybe even people like later in their careers, like me and stuff. They're like, I don't want to reinvent myself.
Hmm.
I mean, I happen to want to. I'm always that's kind of has been my mo my whole career.
Hmm.
But I sure get that. I want people to hear that this is not a tech trend. This is a leadership challenge. And the leaders who ignore it or try to outsource their thinking to it are going to get caught flat footed.
Hmm.
That's my belief.
Hmm.
I believe it is. So here's the real question. Are you doing work AI can't do?
It's a fine balance to describe this, but when people say like AI can't replace the human element, it's
That's such a big statement. It's like, what do you
yeah,
mean?
yeah. It's like,
Like,
what do you
like,
mean? But like when you put it in that context, like, and you're helping me even to go back to one of the things that you said, I think is really monumental about this episode is that leadership really shows up in the friction, and that friction isn't something we should necessarily run from,
mhm,
but learn how to walk through.
yeah. I have grown the most in my life, have been in moments I would not wish on my worst enemy. I would not want to repeat. I sure wouldn't invite,
Hmm.
but they've been in the friction. It has grown me in ways that easy times that couldn't have. So that's very, very
Mm.
well said. One of the things that, our listeners, we've kind of covered kind of a lot here, and we haven't even drawn on the easel board yet. So, I'm just like
It's there for a
shaking.
reason, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just shaking.
We've got to get some
So,
markers out.
yeah. So the risk is not that AI replaces us. That's not the risk. And I've said this a couple times already. It's that we forget how. As humans, we forget how to be humans. We forget how to show up inside of a conversation. We forget how to lead, or we become lazy. We let it do the work that we should be doing.
Mhm.
And we have to make the decisions of where that is. We're in control. It's not, unless we give it the control.
Mhm. We're doing this episode on AI, right? We want to give our listeners and viewers something to kind of go home with, and we'll have some things in the show notes, some stats and whatnot. But we really try and have resources, right? At the end of the day, so that's the goal of this right here, is that we would give something easy to remember that encapsulates what we've discussed today.
Yeah. So, all right. So walk me through it.
All right. So
I should have you up here drawing.
I know, right? Maybe at some point, it's like passing the torch. At some point, before we're done recording this season, I've got to get on up there. No, I'm going to sit right here. You're going to draw this, because I'm going to ask you to draw a visual for me. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So at the very top, I'm going to tell you right now, just in advance, I'm going to have you end up drawing a piece of furniture.
Okay.
Okay.
All
so
right.
Just don't forget that. It's going to look like a piece of furniture.
I'm not a very good drawer.
All right. So at the top, so we're going to end up drawing a line vertically, but at the top, put a C.
Okay.
Okay. So that C stands for curiosity. So we're going to give mnemonic devices giving the first letter of each phrase.
Okay.
It's going to come out to be a piece of furniture, a word of a piece of furniture in the end. But the first word is C. C is reminding people from this episode that we should have curiosity. That we should, and you can feel free to write out the word curiosity if you want to have that up there.
Yep.
But I'll keep talking about this.
That was almost on my
that could have
shirt.
been really bad. I'll keep talking about this though as you write.
You're assuming I know how to spell.
I am. That's right. Curiosity, it means that we would ask boldly, right? And one of the things that you talk about often is that we should lead with clarity, not certainty. I would add for this episode, this conversation, that we should also do that with a healthy dose of curiosity and be willing to ask the questions that we don't want to ask ourselves, and not pretend like we have all the answers. And so just be curious, be willing to ask your team, like, how are you guys using AI? How are you seeing these things show up? Rather than just trying to linearly solve problems.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I'm not going to try to add a whole bunch to that, but I do think that it is a unique moment in time where vulnerability is our friend. And we don't have to worry about being an imposter, because everybody is when it comes to this issue.
That's so true.
Be curious, ask questions.
Yeah. And that's a great segue to the next one. So so you draw a line down for me from,
all right.
Yeah, and leave yourself a little room. There we go. That's great.
All right.
I'll put an H.
H.
If you want to change colors, I'll give you the word.
I'm changing them up.
The phrase here is human impact.
Okay.
So we got 2 words this time, but so we started with C, curiosity, H, human impact.
Human impact. All right.
Yep. The idea that we just keep things grounded in people and emotion. We said it's a pie in the sky question to just say, okay, well, like AI can't replace the human touch, right? It's like, well, what does that even mean, right? I think that we've tried to lay that out here of really focusing on what is leadership, what is coaching, because those things matter. What is mentorship?
Yeah.
I want to leave that part actually to you to kind of riff on here for a second. Any final thoughts on just the human impact and how we drill that home?
2 things come to mind when you ask that question. One is take some time and really reflect. Where are the areas where it is nuanced? Like I said, it is built on context, on standing on those real scars. So think about what those things are. We gave some specific examples in this conversation around how, as an example, where there may be an individual that looks like they're underperforming. Don't just look for ways to give them a improvement, process improvement plan or performance PIP, they're called, performance improvement plan. But think about it, is it a leadership role? Have I done my part as a leader? Do they have clarity in their role? It's one of the, and I think it was after episode 3, we gave in the show notes 5 questions to create real role clarity. Maybe it's those kind of, but that's an example of where we've got to overlay, use it as a thought partner, as somebody that goes through this, but do not hand it your leadership gift.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have you draw a line. So we're going to the third one here. Yep, draw it to the right.
Okay.
And leave yourself some room. Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. And the next
With an A, okay.
Yep. And we'll make that actionability. We're gonna test your spelling with this word.
Yeah. Oh wait, I got to use different colors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What am I doing?
Yeah. Actionability, and just to kind of speak about this while you write that out. The idea here is that we're pulling these lessons into the real world. AI can be a great thought partner, but you're the thought leader at the end of the day when you use AI. And so that's kind of where I think that we should see this is, how can I serve as the thought leader using AI as the thought partner in a way that, changes the way that we do life, changes the way that we do business, changes the way that we make decisions. It's not making the decision for me, but it's helping inform the decision so that we can make that.
And then the part I really like what you're talking about is this, and all this is, I know you're going somewhere this is connecting, but that curiosity, just that human nature of just that, how curious. There's a continuum. Are you at a 2 or are you at a 10? But the piece I'm just thinking about is this human impact, this human part of it, and this action ability, or this ability to take action, and being a thought leader. Don't be a poser, be a thought leader. In order to be a thought leader, you got to be real. You got to ask your team. You got to be curious with your team. Like this is a unique opportunity to really establish yourself as a thought leader. The reality of it is you and I talked about this, is leaders are going to be looked at to have answers on this stuff. And there's articles that I was even reading where their trust when it comes to their leadership is uniquely high. It's not as high in the government and other areas, but in their leadership inside their company, their trust is high. So they're looking to you to have the answer. Don't pretend like you have the answer. If you don't. If you do, great. But if you don't pretend. This is a time to like let's get in, let's talk, let's create an AI Olympics. Let's learn from each other. Like, oh, that's a great idea. I didn't even know that. Or wow, you're using that way to help, But I'm also teaching my CEOs and my executives to listen and learn, like, where are people protecting their jobs? They're going to a line, and then they're not crossing that line. I want to push them across that line, not because I want them to lose their jobs, but because I want them to get better. I want AI to do what it's eventually going to do. Like I said, let's move to the truth. It's going to get there anyways. Let's get there faster and figure out a way to perform in that. Let's get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking when you're thinking about that actionability.
Actionability. All right, that's number 3. We got 2 more here.
Okay.
Next one is I. Go ahead and draw this underneath the H on the left.
Draw it right here?
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Just go straight down with it.
Go straight down here?
Yep.
Okay. I think I know what I'm making.
I stands for insights. There you go. You're switching colors.
I've got to.
Good job.
I'm telling you.
The idea here is that, we're reminding people to synthesize, not just affirm things. And AI can be an affirmer, right? You can use it, if you prompt it with the questions you want, in a way that will give you the answers that you want, it's going to give you exactly that. What we want our leaders to do with AI as a tool is to really focus on not just affirming thoughts, but really challenging things, and then taking information in a way that AI can do a great job of synthesizing thoughts for you. It can also add a lot. Like, it can really actually muddy things up because it's taking you off course from where you initially were. And so the ability to kind of weave through all of that, and we talked about it. I think the best way that this got talked about in this episode is getting back to the roots of yourself, of like, how, what's at the core, like, what matters, like, why am I even doing this? Those types of questions, really being able to synthesize information and weave through it. It comes back to the core of those roots. So anyway, that's where I think that this one's important.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to try to add a bunch to that, just for the sake of adding to it. But I do think this what we're calling is insights, reflection, kind of going deep on that. So I think I know what the last one is.
The last one,
If this
yeah,
is a game show, I would guess the last one.
C.H.A.I.R. And yeah, if this were a Wheel of Fortune,
Let me guess.
R.
R.
No, just kidding. Yeah, we got that's right. So R stands for realness.
Okay.
And this is where we want to land the plane on today's episode. And yeah, there we go. We've gotten that drawn out. Realness is that our leaders would model vulnerability. I said this here on a point a second ago, but I want to hammer this home. There is a lot of ingenuity, and you said it earlier that there are really, really smart people using smart tools like AI, but that starts with smart people. And so these are thought leaders using tools that help speed up the ability to express the thought leadership that comes from a place of modeling vulnerability first. And so the way that AI works today is that the outputs are only as good as the inputs.
Yeah.
And so if you can't model vulnerability, I mean, even in structuring some of the questions I asked you today, and I'm not necessarily reading these verbatim, but at least just to help me process my thoughts, I was using AI. And frankly, I got to a point on this episode where this wasn't the plan to do this episode. And so we were kind of even going back and forth of like, how do we even structure this? Like, this isn't
Yeah.
just to be vulnerable here. Like, how
Yeah.
do we do this in a way that isn't just us pontificating on AI?
Exactly.
Right. And so for me, I had to get vulnerable and say, all right, I finally got it to a point where I was like, yeah, I feel confident in where this is headed, but like, this is a lot to remember. So like, what are the core things to help ground me in this? Because I can't remember all this.
Yes.
And I'm not going to be able to benefit and show up in the way that I want to help facilitate a conversation. Hopefully this has been helpful, but that's kind of been my goal. So I had to get vulnerable and say like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to remember these things. I'm trying to learn this in real time. And yes, this is helpful, but like, get me to the core of this. And that's how it helped me, was getting real with myself so that I could then, the input to AI was like, okay, I'm getting real about this.
And that's a great use case, right? And it's what we've tried to pull through here a little bit is that, examples of curiosity, the examples of that human impact, that actionability. We talked about action all through this 12 episodes that we're going through, these insights and the realness. So I love the simplicity, but the depth of what that creates. And if that works for somebody, great. And if not, that's fine.
Yeah, the goal of that is just to be helpful. So pull up a chair, remember curiosity, human impact, actionability, insights, and realness. So let's put a pin in this. I'm going to ask you for one, but knowing you're probably going to give me more than one.
Yeah.
What's something that a leader can do today? I mean, yes, like we're giving the chair example to kind of summarize today's discussion of this is how you should be thinking about AI in your role. But now what's something they can do about that?
So from a business standpoint, if you're a CEO, if you're leading a private equity, a venture capital firm, if you're a founder, any kind of investor, but also I want you to think about this, like if we have hopefully people that are in the nonprofit world that are listening. It's no different. They're providing leadership. They're providing direction. And I think I'm going to say this twice because I really want people to think about this. It's like, what assumptions am I letting AI validate when I should be challenging them? And that's part of this chair that you were describing. So how quick do I trust what AI is telling me? Where is AI giving me confidence, but not clarity? And there's a fine, fine line there. Because sometimes when we have confidence, we think that's clarity. And it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just looking for that peace of mind and we'll take it as clarity, and it's not.
Yeah, those are really good questions.
And the other one is, am I building a company that thinks critically, that thinks creatively, that it deliberately experiments, or one that just executes quickly? And so, and here it is, I said I'd say this at the end, the real risk isn't that AI replaces us, it's that as leaders, we forget how to lead. We become lazy. We give the work, the hard human work, that friction, those politically messy, those tender moments, those times when someone needs an attaboy, and that time when somebody needs a kick in the rear, we just forget how to do that. We become numb to it. The best leaders that I know behind closed doors, what I'm seeing is a vulnerability. And they're not trying to compete with AI. They're using it to remove that friction. And here's the key point, and they're choosing to do the hard human stuff even better.
One of the things that you mentioned just kind of in our note-taking process in prep for this, a leadership action you can take that I think is helpful, an exercise that can be done is to make a list. And on one side of the list, put the work that AI can do for you in your business, and on the other, what it probably shouldn't do. And to start the doc there just as a way of, engaging the team. And maybe that's something out of curiosity that you go ask your team members, like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
Like, where does this belong?
So you said this, I just want to double down on it, is make it a team sport.
Mhm.
Have your team do that and have a conversation. Once again, it's just kind of fun, just kind of where is that and stuff and everything else like that, and see where there's passion, see where people get maybe a little bit heated up about their point of view. Where did they get? Where are they afraid? Maybe hear what's not being said. Where are they maybe being protective when they maybe need to be more reflective and not as protective. And we put this in one of the earlier show notes, Colin Powell's The Essence of Leadership. And in there, it's a 2-minute video on YouTube. You can go look at it. Essence of Leadership, Colin Powell. He talks about curiosity. They'll follow you if for no other reason out of curiosity.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about.
That's so good. And he ties that to the essence of leadership. He says it comes down to trust.
Yep.
Trust, like I've learned this firsthand when, this is kind of funny example, but when Scotty Scheffler won some tournament, it was one of the majors here recently. He wins a lot.
Yeah.
I pulled up, this was just an exercise I ran to see what are the answers I'm going to get. So I went to ChatGPT and I went to a tool called Perplexity. And I asked ChatGPT, and actually I was not trying to do this from the standpoint of like testing AI tools. I actually did this in ChatGPT and I was like, I actually don't think that's right. But I was comparing it to my favorite golfers, Jordan Spieth. And I was basically asking, like,
who you were up watching at 3:45 a.m. yesterday.
That's exactly
with
right.
my other son-in-law, Travis.
Exactly. It's a tradition we've had since back in college.
That's
and
awesome.
We'll continue it till the day we die.
Yeah, good.
Whenever they go overseas, they
Tell
play
me
over the
about
pond.
it. Yeah,
exactly. But
call me and tell me about it.
I was asking it because I was like, hey, objectively, like, is Scotty better than Jordan, like career-wise? Like, analyze his career and tell me, has he had a better career than Spieth has? And what ChatGPT pulled in the analysis and research that it did was on incomplete data. It was pulling on data that stopped last season. I opened Perplexity a minute later and I asked the same exact question, copy paste. And ChatGPT's answer basically gave me an indifferent response. Perplexity pulled the major he had won 20 minutes prior.
Oh, wow.
And it gave me everything in there. And it said, based on his recent major, along with, and it, all the money he's made through winning and the wins and all that kind of stuff, yes, he surpassed him at this point. And I got a more complete answer. And so it's funny, like, trust is really, really important, because if I just went to the first source, ChatGPT, and said,
example.
hey, I trust it, it gave me a very incomplete answer. I went to another tool, and that's what I'm saying. This is not about tooling, like, because at the end of the day, the tools are going to change. Like, by the time this comes out, Perplexity may not even, actually, Grok just released a model, the 4.0 model in Grok 4 that has real-time search capability. So Grok, I haven't looked at the actual metrics yet, but it may be on par with what Perplexity is able to pull now. So even at the time of recording this, I already know there's a competing tool, that it may already be passing that up at this point. I know that they're like kind of jockeying for app downloads between those two right now, which is kind of funny. But anyway, the point is that it's not about tooling. It really comes down to the roots. How do I envision business? How do I make decisions? What do I trust to inform decisions? Knowing that those inputs are going to change, but there are some core principles. And I think you do a great job of laying that out in this podcast, this whole season of, these are the warning signs of success. These are the things that are tried and true that I've seen over 30 years that have manifested for hundreds of years and frankly are going to remain the same. Yeah, maybe they show up differently in the day to day because the world around us is changing, but the core of it is all true. And so getting back to who we are, leading with curiosity, focusing on human impact, finding ways to actionably weave these insights through and just be real. Be vulnerable. I think that that's the core of today's message.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pulling that thread through, and you always do a really good job of that. And there's so much truth in what you're saying. And so, in my simplistic way of saying it,
See, now you're going to do the shorter version. I rambled for a bit, so now let's see you condense
well,
it here.
let's use chainsaws to cut down trees, not brush our teeth.
Yeah.
And in all seriousness, thinking about everything that we've talked about here is it really is leaning in and not using like I said, this just oversimplifying this to a tool, and the people that I'm talking to are figuring the human side of it out.
Mhm. What a great way to condense that. Well, we invite people to connect over this, connect with you. What are some of the best ways that they can connect with you?
I'm active on LinkedIn, Kirk Dando, and then come to our website, kirkdando.com is a great way to do it. So those are some ways people can connect. Again, I appreciate you highlighting that we needed to pull this into the series. It's even become more evident through these conversations, and I hope to our listeners it has as well.
It's awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. In this episode, we explored how AI is changing leadership and how smart CEOs are using it as an advantage, not as a distraction. But here's the other side of the scale journey. What happens when things look like they're working on the surface, but under the hood cracks are forming? Revenue is up, but accountability is off. Growth is strong, but systems are breaking. That's what we're covering next. In our next episode, we will uncover the next 3 warning signs of success, those subtle but dangerous signals that things might not scale the way you think. If you want to avoid silent drift and lead with intention, this next conversation is essential.
Thank you for tuning in to the For You Leaders podcast with Kirk Dando. If this episode helped you think more clearly or act more decisively, that's good. But the journey doesn't stop there. Subscribe for more content on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or go to Kirk's website at kirkdando.com to inquire about coaching opportunities. Now think of a friend, family member, or business leader in your life. How could you help normalize their journey today? Share this podcast with them. We hope that this sparks meaningful conversations in your life and that it enables you to become the leader that you aspire to be.